Your patience is rewarded.
Four Planeswalkers vanish into the blind eternities and are summoned to a fatal free-for-all skirmish. The Quartet have chosen a commander to represent them in an all-out assault where only one can leave as champion. Who will amass the most vicious army and leave triumphantly as victor? Find out on Commander BLITZKRIEG! WUBRG takes the first turn playing a temple and scrying to the top. Joe also plays a temple and scries to the top. Brandon plays a shock land, letting it enter tapped. Tyler plays Scoured Barrens, gaining 1 life. WUBRG plays a forest and casts Drover of the Mighty. Joe casts Skullclamp. He then plays Azorius Chancery, bouncing his temple to his hand. Brandon plays a Drowned Catacomb, then taps to cast Arcane Signet. Tyler untaps and plays a Plains, then passes his turn. WUBRG plays a Jungle Shrine as his land. He then taps for 3 and casts Adzokan Seer. Joe casts Omen of the Sea on his main phase, scrying both to the top. He plays the temple as land for turn, keeping the card on top. Brandon plays a Terramorphic Expanse and passes his turn. Tyler plays a Plains and casts Tainted Sigil. WUBRG plays an Unclaimed Territory naming Dinosaurs, and continues to ramp by casting Knight of the Stampede. He attacks Tyler with Adzokan Seer for 2 damage. Joe casts Monastery Siege, choosing Khans to draw and discard an additional card during his upkeep. During his end step, Brandon cracks his Terramorphic Expanse to fetch a forest. Brandon casts Farseek during his turn to fetch an Indatha Triome, putting it into play tapped. Tyler plays a Plains and taps all of his mana to cast Angelic Accord. WUBRG plays Blossoming Sands as land for turn, gaining 1 life. He casts his commander Gishath. Gishath has haste and attacks Tyler for 7 damage. Tyler has no blocks and takes 7 commander damage. Gishath's ability triggers, but WUBRG whiffs on all 7 cards revealed, putting those 7 cards to the bottom of his library. Joe draws an extra card during his upkeep from the Khan's ability on Monastery Siege. He discards Ash Barrens. Joe plays a Plains, then taps 4 mana to cast Chittering Witch. Chittering Witch's ETB trigger resolves, and Joe makes 3 1/1 Black Rat creature tokens. Brandon casts Propaganda and passes his turn. Tyler makes the most of his mana, tapping out to cast Rampage of the Valkyries. The ETB trigger resolves, and Tyler creates a 4/4 White Angel creature token with Flying and Vigilance. WUBRG plays a Mountain and moves directly to attacks. He attacks Brandon with Gishath, paying 2 for the Propaganda. Brandon takes 7 commander damage, and Gishath's ability triggers once again. This time, WUBRG hits Regisaur Alpha and Trapjaw Tyrant. Regisaur Alpha's ETB trigger creates a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token with Trample. Regisaur Alpha's ability also gives WUBRG's dinosaurs haste. During his second main phase, WUBRG casts Eladamri's Call, revealing a Goring Ceratops and putting it into his hand. Joe untaps and draws an extra card during his upkeep for Monastery Siege, discarding a land. Joe plays his Temple of Enlightenment, scrying 1 and keeping the card on top. Joe taps 4 mana to cast Reform and passes his turn. Brandon casts Golos, fetching Command Tower, which enters play tapped. Tyler plays a Plains and casts Merciless Eviction, choosing to exile all creatures. WUBRG plays Tranquil Thicket as land for turn, which enters the battlefield tapped. WUBRG casts Ranging Raptors to hopefully help him ramp, and passes turn. Joe draws an additional card during his upkeep, and discards another land. Joe casts Legion's Landing, which creates a 1/1 white vampire with lifelink upon ETB. He uses the remainder of his mana to cast Solemn Simulacrum, fetching a swamp to put into play tapped. Moving along, Brandon begins his turn and moves to main phase to cast Wound Reflection. He has no additional mana available and passes to Tyler. Tyler plays a Radiant Fountain as land for turn, gaining him 2 life. He casts his commander Liesa and passes to WUBRG. WUBRG moves directly to attacks, attacking Joe with Ranging Raptors. Joe takes the 2 damage. On his second main phase, WUBRG casts Rhythm of the Wild, losing 2 life from Liesa's ability. On end step, WUBRG takes an additional 2 damage from Wound Reflection. Joe takes his turn, drawing an additional card during upkeep and discarding Midnight Reaper. Joe casts Court of Ambition. He loses 2 life from Liesa's ability, but Court of Ambition makes him Monarch upon ETB. Joe equips the Skull Clamp to Solemn Simulacrum. He loses an additional 2 life on end step from Wound Reflection and draws a card for Monarch. Brandon uses his turn to cast Diabolic Tutor. He puts the card into his hand and passes to Tyler. Tyler casts Ordeal of Heliod, losing 2 life from Liesa's ability and attaching the aura to Liesa. Tyler moves to attacks, paying 2 mana for Propaganda in order to attack Brandon. Tyler adds a counter to Liesa from the Ordeal of Heliod ability. Brandon takes 6 damage, and Tyler gains 6 life. During Tyler's end step, Wound Reflection causes Tyler to lose 2 additional life. Angelic Accord also triggers from the life gain this turn, causing Tyler to create a 4/4 Angel token with flying. WUBRG plays a Plains and passes turn. Joe begins his turn. Court of Ambition triggers. Brandon and WUBRG both discard a card. Tyler chooses to lose 6 life. Joe draws an additional card from Monastery Siege and discards Guile, which gets shuffled back into his library due to Guile's ability. Joe takes 2 damage from Liesa to cast Sun Titan. returning a land from his graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Joe moves to his end step, Tyler loses an additional 6 life, and Joe loses another 2. Tyler sacrifices Tainted Sigil, causing him to gain life equal to the amount of life lost this turn, putting him back at 40 life. Brandon taps out and reveals he has assembled his combo by losing 2 life to cast Havoc Festival. Players now cannot gain life. Each upkeep, that player loses half their life rounded up. Tyler untaps and loses half his life during upkeep, bringing him down to 20 life. Tyler uses his turn to pay the 6 mana for Propaganda and to attack Brandon with all of his angels. Brandon takes 15 total damage. It doesn't matter much, as during Tyler's end step, Wound Reflection triggers, draining the last of his 20 life and eliminating Tyler. Up next, WUBRG loses half his life rounded up, bringing his life total to 18. WUBRG gets a bit too excited and makes a fatal error. He taps out to cast Awakening Sun's Avatar to destroy all non-dinosaur creatures. Joe draws 3 cards from Solemn Simulacrum dying, with Skullclamp also attached. WUBRG realizes his fatal error after giving the Awakening Sun's Avatar haste. He has no mana left to pay for the Propaganda tax. He defeatedly passes to end step, and Wound Reflection punishes the misplay, making WUBRG extinct. During Joe's upkeep, he loses half his life due to Havoc Festival. Court of Ambition triggers, and Brandon discards 2 cards. Joe draws an additional card from Monastery Siege, discarding his own Propaganda. Joe sacrifices his Omen of the Sea to scry, and sees there is no way out of this mess. He moves to end step, losing the rest of his life, and Brandon wins our game with Chaos Golos. Hey card hoarders, thank you so much for watching the new episode of Commander Blitzkrieg. If you like what you saw, please subscribe, and look in the description for some of the deck lists featured in this video. Until next time.